Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Chats with Emily, as we are calling our reading through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are using the Johnson edition. We turned out a poem 235. The court is far away. A lot of legal language happening in this poem. Remember, of course, that Emily's father is the important lawyer in Amherst. Many have read this poem as another Sam Boyle's poem. However, it can be read as any number of potential friends of Emily that for whatever reason she has let down or offended is her language. Why? We're not completely clear. Typical Emily Dickinson poem. There's a whole lot of uncertainty about exactly what's happening in the poem, but that's not going to stop us from enjoying and reading the poem. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've already worked through our set of introductory comments, Sam Boyle's, obviously, we mentioned there, as well as the preceding 234 poems. We just finished with 234, You're Right, the Way is Narrow. Note the longing tone of this offering. That is to say, Emily clearly wants things to work out between she and her. Can I call it interlocular, to borrow from the preceding poem 234? And here we will borrow, in fact, from that preceding poem. I'm hopeful that you've already read it. Poem 235. The court is far away, no umpire have I. My sovereign is offended, to gain his grace I die. I'll seek his royal feet, I'll say, remember, king, thou shalt thyself one day, a child, implore a larger thing. That empire is of czars as small, they say, as I. Grant me that day the royalty to intercede for thee. Now, we're going to get to this notion of intercession, and I think we've got to come back to the King James Bible one more time and the Hebrews 7:25 passage. We'll play the game in a second. What's standing behind the context of this poem? Well, clearly somebody is offended, and clearly Emily is wanting to remind that individual who offense has been taken for whatever reason, that someday that individual will have to stand on Judgment Day in front of deity, and she's hopeful at that point that she can intercede for the very person that she has apparently offended. Let's go to work with it. The court is far away can have any number of meanings. Again, this idea of court and lawyers and legal language and all of that tracks us back to her father. The court is far away. Far away obviously can be as well kind of like at arm's reach. That can be it. In other words, as we get into the poem, it's like clearly something bad has happened. She's trying to figure out how to make it right. Of course, justice could be here, and what else is far away? Notice she'll say no umpire. This is the only time the word umpire gets used in all of her poems. No umpire have I. My sovereign is offended. Now, some see this sovereign as being, especially because it's capitalized, not God or not deity here, but rather somebody like Sam Boyles. In other words, maybe she upset Sam Boyles. We commented on the fact that she could be, for Sam, a person that was overwhelming at times to her. Certainly the letters back and forth suggest that Sam at times could tire of Emily's just incessant, assiduous kinds of referencing. My sovereign is offended. Now why, we don't know. To gain his grace, notice it is his. So this makes us maybe think that it's not Sue. To gain his grace, I die. In other words, I would do anything to make it right with whoever it is that is this sovereign. I'll seek his royal feet. So now notice we go from it's for the sovereign now to the royal. Notice it isn't I'll seek your royal feet, but rather his royal feet. I'll say, remember, king, so we go from sovereign to king. And there could be a lot of irony and game playing going on here. Like I've said to you guys before, I think a lot of times Emily's poetry is read as so serious. I think a poem like this can actually be read as almost like tongue-in-cheek, almost like as in jest. Okay, get over it, I offended you, big deal, like that, as opposed to being so serious here. Notice, I'll seek his royal feet. I'll say, remember, king, and of course this use of the word feet will take us back to Christ, who obviously washed the feet of the disciples and all of that. I'll say, remember, king, thou shalt thyself one day, a child, notice capitalized, implore a larger thing. And of course, this idea of king and thing rhyming will play the game of, hey, just to remind, there's going to be an umpire. There's going to be a sovereign that you have to stand in front of as well, right? Maybe she's playing games or being serious with Sam Boyles, who knows. That empire is of czars. Czars will take you back to poem 199. As small, they say, as I told you guys, her love of this word small, often emphasizing her fragility, her smallness. You'll remember that we've said 77 poems small gets used, 172 poems she emphasizes with the word little. Grant me, will take us back to poem 131, that day the royalty, from king to royalty, to intercede for thee. Now I think Emily is playing a nice sacrilegious game here with this word intercede. I do. And it's possible that she wrote this poem even for a religious person. We could think of those in her life who would maybe read it that way. Certainly there would be the possibility of seeing her use of this word intercede as being an allusion to Hebrews 7:25. The King James Version will read like this: wherefore he, speaking of Christ, is able also to save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. By the way, this use of the word intercede will be referenced only one other time in Emily's poetry. In poem 1255, she'll play the game this way: longing is like the seed that wrestles in the ground, believing if it intercede, it shall at length be found. The hour, the climb, each circumstance unknown, what constancy must be achieved before it see the sun. This idea of, hey, I will go to bat for you if you will just allow me to make whatever concessions need to be made so that you're not offended anymore. How are we going to read a poem like this? Well, I think the message here is that friends will try and do anything to remain friends, especially when they feel like they've offended in some way. At 2b, though, I love this voice. I can't make out whether it's longing or whether it's chiding, and maybe even ironic. It's possible that it could be as well sacrilegious, given the referencing to some possible biblical language. Now, as in poems 220 and 226, notice that Emily here is, as David Priest, the scholar, has pointed out, nobly one-sided. In other words, we know Emily's side of this. We don't know the other side at all. Go back and look at 220, 226 to see what we're talking about there. Obviously, the Hebrews 7:25 passage can come to mind here. This language, this theological language of intercession as she's playing the game. Finally, to own a poem like this at 3b, what was a time when you longed to patch things up with a friend of yours and maybe you use some language either serious or maybe a little bit funny, or maybe both? Thank you.